All right, we're going to start and bring out another panel. So why don't you come on out, come take a seat on the soft couches and teach us things that we want to know. You have our attention. Everybody, let's give the panel a hand and let's get started.
All right, I guess we'll start with some introductions. My name is Lauren Halstead. I work for Chainlink Labs. I work on all the dynamic NFTs. I help run sports media and entertainment business development. And I also help launch the VRF product at Chainlink. Great to be here.
Hi everyone, I'm Louell. I'm presently with Memento Studio. I previously co-founded a dynamic NFT platform before Fractio, and what we did was we enabled creatives to actually connect digital assets or NFTs with real-world live data. So think of it as a Picasso painting, for example, that changes based on the price of Ethereum or the price of Coke. Right now, we are currently working with Spatial, and with Spatial, we want to help research scientists to build geospatial images that react to weather oracles. So think of it again as having an image, for example, that you just upload of New York City, and once there's like a change of weather, like a rain, the image will also change. So yeah.
Hello everyone, my name is Maksym Naboka. And I'm a founder of Anva. So previously I was a software engineer at Coinbase. Now I started my business. So we are building the platform that embraces the dynamic NFTs. Yeah.
Very cool. So we don't directly have a moderator here, so I guess I'm stepping in as the part-time moderator with you guys. But so I guess we'll start off. Do you think the future of NFTs is dynamic?
Awesome. Yeah, I think I can start. I think definitely the future for the space will be about dynamic NFTs. But there is like one sort of core issue that we see, and that's immutability of the underlying metadata. So the problem is, if you own a particular NFT, you kind of understand that you own the underlying asset. But if the NFT is dynamic and it can change, how do you actually value? Like, how do you sort of like understand that the the value underneath is actually there? Like, it won't change tomorrow, or like it won't change based on some internal or external events. So that's kind of the challenge. And in my opinion, I think what will happen with the dynamic NFTs and like this area is that. So the NFTs will probably stay the same, but there will be an application layer that is built on top of that. And so the application layer can implement a lot of interesting like dynamic features and dynamic mechanics that will be using the building blocks, which are the NFTs as we know today.
So I think because I've always been in love with dynamic NFTs, and I always liken it to your right brain combining with your left brain. If your right brain is more technical, more data driven, just imagine what we could accomplish if you combine that with your left brain, which is more artistic and more abstract. And I think that ultimately we want to push that boundaries, right? The boundaries of technology. With science, we've done that already, and I think it's about time that art is also pushing the technology. And I think with dynamic NFTs, this is possible. There are two things actually that I want to talk with regards to the future of NFTs. In fact, I think that if you're an artist out there, the first thing that you should realize is that once you use dynamic NFTs, it enriches your art more. Actually, so. Last year, actually, I talked with this artist from NYU, and one of the things that she mentioned was, because she's doing mostly abstract art, and it gave her abstract art, for example, more value in terms of presenting to her community. And the second one that I want to emphasize on is the problem aspect, that it's also very important to look at specific problems rather than look at the solution itself. In Spatial, for example, what we found out was that there's a lot of problem with regards to geospatial images. So because most of this, actually, the data is siloed and placed in government, centralized government servers. So just imagine how difficult it is to access that. So we postulated that what if you're able to, you're able to help this research scientist essentially mint, but build these geospatial images in the form of a dynamic NFT. It's just literally just a wrapper, and then use that to connect to a weather oracle. So we had a lot of positive reviews with regards to that one because we focused on the problem itself. And it's also important to, because I've always been the type of person who wants to ask more, right? Like, what else can we do? What else can we do? Recently, I've been talking to a lot of people in the conference, and a lot of them are actually creating their own version of dynamic NFTs. And Maksym and I were talking about this, and a lot of people are actually creating a version of dynamic NFTs, and I think that's a very good thing. Now, there's application in art, there's application in gaming, there's all this different application, even in branding, for example, for companies. But I think the ultimate question is, what else can dynamic NFTs do? And I think we've just begun to touch the surface of what dynamic NFTs can actually do.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. So at Chainlink, we take off-chain data and we bring it on-chain. So what we've been working on this past year, heavily involved in sports data, so bringing sports data on-chain into NFTs. Recently worked with the NBA, Des Bryant and LaMelo Ball, to bring their real-time sports data on the NFT to update in real time according to what's happening in the game, in the real world, to make them more interesting. And I just see this continuing to develop over time as we enter the future. Tons of different ideas, and just listening to you guys speak now, I've had people reach out to me about tracking geospatial weather and then having an animal NFT that updates to show, say, the scarcity of elephants in Africa based on the weather, so that you have a real attachment to that animal. So if you think about like Save the Planet, Save the Animals with the, when you used to adopt a panda and they'd send you the stuffed animal, I think of dynamic NFTs in the future as you have this panda that it changes according to what's happening with the panda in real life. And that gives you an emotional attachment to the animal, and then also just makes it more interesting as an NFT. It gives a little bit more purpose than just a straight up collectible as they are now.
Awesome, yeah. I think like one thing that I wanted to add is that a lot of people and like a lot of projects, they are definitely building some version of the dynamic NFT, and they also use like this term dynamic as kind of like overloaded term to mean many, many different things. And I think like what would be great is like, can we sort of like speak and define what is the dynamic NFT? Like, what is the definition of this term? Lauren, do you want to?
Yeah, sure, no, yeah, it could mean a lot of different things. So I think of a dynamic NFT as something that changes according to different conditions. So whether it's sunny 7 days in a row, then that NFT will have a new trait, and that new trait gives it more value because it makes it more scarce and more rare. So that's what I think of a dynamic NFT is. I'm not sure if...
So basically, I define dynamic NFTs as the ability of NFTs, for example, using, of course, oracles or basically any data set, as long as you have an API, that causes that NFT to actually change. But what's actually changing is not the NFT itself. It's actually, we're just using layers. That's the thing. So you connect one layer, for example, of, you connect one image, for example, with the price of Ethereum at, let's say, 1,200. And then another layer, for example, another image to Ethereum at the price of 2,000. Something like that. So it's fascinating how we can actually cause these images to change again based on the, based on the price of Ethereum, or even, the price of Coke.
Yeah, I agree. I think that makes a lot of sense. So it's basically an asset that can react to certain sort of events and can change to some extent. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The only problem, so I sort of like touched on a little bit about that, but for user, like for someone on the community who actually buys the NFT, it's a little bit like challenging to figure out the true value, right? Like when you're buying something, you sort of like have the clear understanding what you're buying, right? Like what are the set of traits, and then if the NFT traits are changing, right? It's a little bit like how do you value than that? Like does it worth? Like is it worth the same that you paid for, or like is it something else? So I think that's really interesting challenge that we'll have to figure out.
Yeah. To make a Pokemon reference, I remember when Ash had Pikachu, and then Pikachu finally got to the point where he could evolve into the next level, into Raichu, I believe. And what if you didn't want him to evolve into Raichu? What if you want him to stay a little pink, yellow Pikachu? That's kind of where it becomes interesting. Like, do you want that upgrade, or do you want the original?
So I think that the value of, I mean, NFTs in general, it's just like the art world, right? I mean, a lot of people value a certain thing based on the community that you're in. And for example, like Beeple was able to sell, that painting that he had. I think the important again aspect here is looking at the communities, because ultimately it will be the community who will value your NFT, even if it's just a simple static NFT.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. One sort of question that I have is like, what are the potential use cases you see for the dynamic NFTs, Lauren?
Sure, there's tons of use cases for dynamic NFTs. I'll do more of a real world, less on the art side example. Say you had an airline ticket and you had insurance built into the smart contract. So as soon as you're sitting on that flight and you get the 30-minute delay and you're out on the runway and you're all mad, all of a sudden your ticket NFT would update and give you a refund in real time. So that would change the value of the NFT. I think that's one example. Happy to give more as well. I think of like in gaming NFTs, dynamic NFTs. Say you had a character that was stronger during the summer, and then the Oracle would pull in weather or data indicating it is summer in the game itself. So if you own that summer dynamic NFT character, it's stronger against the winter NFT character during a certain season. Keep going with I can go with examples all day of what they can be. But.
Yeah. For me personally, because I always focus on like problems, the way we found out about spatial because one of my colleagues was actually working with geospatial images, and one of the things that they mentioned is the centralized servers are really hard and it's accurate. And just imagine the workload that we would be able to, if we help, for example, this research scientists to be able to finally just upload their image, meant of course wrapped in an ERC731, and have the option of not just putting them on the chain, but a marketplace as well. So there's actually a lot of opportunity for that.
Yes, definitely.
Awesome. Yeah, I also wanted to add like one sort of like interesting use case. I think like nowadays there's like a lot of NFT collections, and if you can launch your own NFT collection, then that's great. Like you have to build your community, you have to figure out the the PR and like the marketing and like a lot of other things. But what really would be cool is if you let your community to participate in the existing project, right? And what I mean by that is, like, imagine that some of the traits or like some of the sort of attributes, they can be detachable and attachable on the NFT, right? So there might be some brand artist, might be some community artists that can create like really, really nice, high quality artwork. And the community users can use this artwork to sort of like accessorize and like equip those items on the NFT character. So yeah, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I think another use case would be dynamic NFT ticketing. I have always gone to house music concerts, music events in general, and I think leveraging the community, because so much of what NFTs are worth are its community. So using communities that pre-exist and then bringing them into these NFTs. So say you had 80 golden ticket NFTs, and every time you went to a concert, you'd gain a point or gain more value. It would show that you've been to like 10 of the concerts in a row, and then all of a sudden you can get a free upgrade to get a ticket. Or if you don't want to use that ticket, you can use that trait and then trade it to a friend to use that trait. So I think there's a lot of interesting things you can do there to also share the utility. So it's just not like in my wallet, I'm the only one who can use it, but like traits built on top of the NFTs are interchangeable within the community at large.
Yeah, and there's also VRF, right? Verifiable randomness.
Verifiable randomness functions.
Yeah, which is really mind-blowing actually for me, because the thing is you have to understand the way you see blockchain as a whole as something that, if you're from the medical field, something that's aseptic, we call aseptic. No one's supposed to touch that. So no one can or is allowed to touch that, right? The chain itself. So the question now begets is how do you integrate data into it? And that's where companies like Chainlink, for example. These are the oracles, actually, we call them. And they're the ones who actually are able to, influence technically the chain to create, for example, to change, for example, in terms of dynamic NFTs, to change based on the price, based on price feeds, for example. So I think for me that's mind blowing, and it's really fascinating how these oracles are able to integrate themselves on chain.
Great. Yeah. So one question I have is like, what is your favorite dynamic NFT project, Lauren?
All right, my favorite dynamic NFT project so far, I would definitely say it was the NBA. I think it's super exciting. I got to work on a project where during the playoffs, every single player changed their traits based on their performance in the games, and that leading up to whoever wins the playoffs, that original collectible will be worth more because of how they performed in the game. So I would say that was my favorite so far, but there's so many limitless things you can do with these NFTs. I spoke to somebody who's doing Chainlink hackathons, and I bring up the ETH mood ring a lot about a ring changing based on the price of ETH. So if the price is really high, it's green, low, it's red. I still think that's a really cool idea, just because you can see in real time what's happening with the price based on also using the Chainlink price oracles.
Personally, for me, I'm very biased because I worked with Fractio before, so the art is really, I think, fascinating. Because I told you, right? There's this abstract artist that I get to, so I used to do I was a community manager for Fractio before, and so I talked to a lot of this artist, and the thing that was mind-blowing to me was when she said that you can actually give more value to my abstract art, to the art that she's actually doing. So it's, from a use case perspective, it enables her art now to be more for people to understand more about her art when she uses dynamic NFTs.
Awesome. Yeah, for me, I think I'm thinking about the Bored Ape and the Mutant Serum in terms of like those are two building blocks, immutable NFTs, but once you sort of like combine them, like use the application that can combine them, the output is something new and something unique. Hello.
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 I'm Josh. Nice to see everybody. I'm Dr. Josh. Sorry to be late. I went to the wrong theater.
No worries. Yeah, so
What's the
welcome.
TLDR?
Yeah, we've been discussing the dynamic NFTs and the future that will probably be dynamic for the NFTs. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, and like what is your kind of take on this?
Yeah, so I feel like a good example of this is like characters. Like video game characters is an easy example. Like if you think about like the characters you usually know, like we start with like Mario, where there's like everybody plays the same Mario and he dies and comes back to life, and like that's just that. I feel like we could do something really cool with NFTs and just everything being persistent. Like you could mint characters, and then the character's story is kind of recorded on the blockchain as you use it. So like everything that you do actually follows the character instead of kind of just like you restart the game every time you play it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that for like virtual characters, but also like maybe even for ourselves. Like we could do things where we're recording information about ourselves and our achievements and like what we do on the blockchain. And maybe that'll like lead to more accountability with people, and also like in just like online identities if people like actually adopt it and trust it.
Yeah, so many use cases. That's awesome. And do you want to talk about your favorite NFT, like dynamic NFT project?
So like there's a few. My favorite is Forgotten Runes, that's my PFP from that. Like that's Dr. Slurp synthesizer of sounds, and they're kind of just doing distributed world building. Kind of like trying to make a decentralized Disney or decentralized Marvel, where like the people who are engaging in the community and creating content actually own the characters and could kind of guide like the canon of what happens in the world. And like they just released their first comic book, and the game just came out, and like people are like for the comic book, they're taking from the lore that people committed themselves to the book of lore on chain. So like it really is decentralized world building and like adding on to NFTs, and like this isn't the canonical representation of this character. Like they're also making 3D models of it. You could represent them however you want. They're represented differently in the comic book. So it's like you own the idea of the character, not these pixels. Like you do own these pixels, but you really own the idea to the character.
Awesome. Yeah. So another sort of like interesting point is that so when NFTs sort of like became like more popular, one of the benefit is that it's actually like the collection is detached from a particular platform, right? So it's like a standalone, and since this is the permissionless and open protocol, other sort of platforms can implement some kind of integration and then use those characters or like use those items on their platform. And so my kind of like my question, or maybe kind of think about, like, do you think the future of the dynamic NFTs, would that be sort of like tied to a specific platform or to a specific sort of like metaverse, or it's going to be like completely decoupled, like living in their own sort of like world? Yeah, Lauren, what do you think?
I think ideally, to give them the most value, they'd be interchangeable within the different worlds. So say I live in New York City world, you live in Dunes world, I get an axe, like I should be able to go into your world and give you the axe, and then maybe it levels up because I transferred into the other world. But ideally, I think there's like, the metaverse already exists. Like the metaverse is an extension of ourselves. Like for all we know, this is the metaverse, and it's really, really good AI and AR, and we don't need the Oculuses anymore.
The Matrix.
Yeah, the Matrix is real. But yeah, I think the items should 100% be interchangeable between the different worlds. I think that makes most sense to me.
For me, I think because I define the metaverse as the entire internet or the entire ecosystem, if you're from the Web 2 space, the Web3 is really just the Z-plane by definitions. And I think that it's not going to be tied to a specific platform. It's going to be, and we're going to see a lot more in the future. So yeah, and if you are interested, you could always message me in LinkedIn. I'm in LinkedIn, and I'm also on Twitter, Blockchain for Med.
Why don't we let the doctor have the last word, if that's all right? Thank you for coming. I know how difficult NYC transportation can be. So why don't you close us out, and we'll give all of you panelists a hand.
Yeah, so I think there's two answers. I think the easy and closed-minded answer is that it'll all exist on centralized platforms, but how's that any different than what we already know? So yes, it should, like, you should be able to bring your character and your items and whatever you want, and like your media, your music, your UI sounds with you wherever you want. So just figuring out good ways to specify like what the data is and good metadata standards, and like, yeah, it's annoying and difficult and just like a lot of detail-oriented things, but I feel like if people start, I don't know, looking at how people share metadata from like maybe even academics, even though academics sucks, like as a PhD, like it sucks, but like they have done a lot of cool research on specifying metadata. So just like taking a look at that and like reusing all the stuff that they have so that you could import your characters to new worlds and make it as painless as possible, so like we could work on building more of the fun stuff or just playing in the fun stuff. Yeah.
Let's give our panel a hand. Thank you so much for being here and sharing with us. The future of NFTs will be dynamic. That certainly is true. We appreciate your insights on it.